Today's topic is how to build a RAID log that is actually helpful. And so, what is a RAID log? In project management, it's a tool that we use to capture all the things that need to get followed up on at the highest level. And RAID stands for risks, actions, issues, and decisions. I've seen some people that have put dependencies in here as well and had it as 2Ds, but for now, we'll just keep it as one. And it's really one of the most powerful tools that we can use because it inventories and lets us control the things that are outstanding, as I mentioned. It avoids surprises because it captures and tracks some of those things that matter. And I'll go into what each of these are in a second. It's often ignored because it's either built poorly or updated inconsistently or not at all. I've seen projects where they'll do the risks up front and then they never look at them again. And the RAID log needs to be simple, actionable, and visible. And because it helps the team stay aligned and it makes reporting way easier. It also turns chaos into clarity. And it's really, to me, it's not so much about the tool. So it doesn't matter if it's an Excel spreadsheet or some project management tool. The value is in the process of identifying the items, tracking them, and running them down to closure. To me, that's the value. So don't worry too much about this being sort of a process-focused conversation. Think about it in terms of the intention, which is to follow up on these items. So why does it matter? As I mentioned, it captures those main items. It centralizes the information in one place. So our projects and programs are really complex, and having one inventory of all the stuff we need to run down is pretty important. It also helps leadership see what could go wrong, that's the risks, as well as what is going wrong, which are the issues. It prevents missing tasks, forgotten decisions, things like that. Supports the data-driven updates, and it protects the PMs. I will tell you, having these items documented is so important because there's so many times that I've seen where a decision was made and it got revisited later, and you go back to the document. You said, no, on this date, this person said this, and here's why. And by not having that documented, you sort of lose that history. It also encourages ownership because every one of those items is assigned to somebody. And so, let's start by talking about keeping it simple, right? It really needs to be clean. It can't be 20 columns long and a giant Excel spreadsheet with just so much content because then that's not maintainable. It really should only be the essential information needed. So maybe it's like one tab per category. So risks in one place, issues in another, actions in a third. I'm a big fan of filters and conditional formatting, so I like different colors that show what's open, filter out the closed items, things like that. And you want it to be clear language so people reading it can understand it. Um, I think it needs to be revisited on a regular basis, at the very least weekly. And I talk a lot about this being sort of a living process, but it needs to be simple because otherwise it won't be maintained and it won't be usable. So let's talk about risks. These are things that might happen, not things that have already happened. And there's lots of risks. Some of them are broad risks, like hey, we can have an earthquake, right? And it's a risk, but probably has a low probability. And so there's a bunch of elements for risks, and there's all sorts of documentation on what should be in a risk log with probability and all this kind of stuff. I like using sort of a high, medium, and low impact just to make it sort of relative scoring. Um, and it's important to put dates on these items so that you know when it could happen and that you know when you have to close them down. And a lot of times there's different ways you can act on a risk. There's avoiding it or accepting it. But most of the times it's about mitigations. How do we avoid the risk happening so that it doesn't become an issue? And if it does, that's where things need to be escalated so that they don't become a sort of a bigger issue. Next up is action. So this just tasks assigned to people. We have a lot of items in our project plans, which are milestones and deliveries and activities. But on projects all the time, different actions are coming up that come up in meetings that somebody needs to assign something or follow up on something. And just having a list of all of them in one place is super helpful because most times people don't really go back to meeting minutes and try to update where the actions are or follow up on emails. So having it in one place is important so that you can then, as the PM, we spend a lot of time following up. We can chase down the people to take care of them. Use the action log in key meetings. And certainly when things are past due, you need to sort of chase them down. And again, having them in one place just avoids people forgetting them or not taking care of them because I promise you, just assigning it to somebody doesn't mean it'll get done. So now we've got issues. So that's problems that are happening right now, and these are relatively impactful things that should come to the top of the list. So what is the issue? What's the impact? Is there a workaround? It should always have an action plan with a specific date and a specific name assigned to it. And a lot of these things sometimes are needed to be escalated to senior leaders, so it's important to have that information, especially when issues arise. And obviously these things should be called out in the status and communicated, and not just put on a list. And that's why reviewing them on a regular basis is so important. And a lot of times, if the issue is significant enough, it should impact the color of the status, right? If it's impacting your ability to deliver, then the project becomes yellow or even red if you think it's now going to prevent you from making your commitments. So decisions are choices made or need to be moved forward. So, maybe there's a decision on if the project should continue, if there's a proof of concept on something, or one around, a key scope element that needs to be decided on. And, there's certain ones that are pending, that are upcoming, as opposed to ones that are needed and not necessarily underway. I think it's important to put the impact, so not just of what is the decision, but what happens if it's not made. What is the consequence of that? And so a lot of times that helps with the communication of it, and it sort of shows the sense of urgency. It also prevents the "I thought we agreed upon" later. I tell you, as I mentioned before, it's so many times that you have to revisit these things because people forget, and then they want to relitigate things that have already been made, and it's not a great use of time. And it provides that traceability, especially for companies that have internal audit functions that are always looking to document these things. Accountability, as I mentioned, every single item on the list has to have a single named owner, and those owners have to be aware of their responsibilities. That sounds like a basic point, but a lot of times, as I mentioned, just putting in a log doesn't mean somebody's going to do it. And so making sure that they're aware that they're accountable for it. A lot of times with RAID logs, I like only putting the names of the team members that I work with, even if they're not ultimately the person who's doing the thing, because that tells me who I need to follow up with, and who, maybe it's a PM that needs to run down something. I put their name on it as opposed to the person who has to do the work, so that I can sort of stay within the people that I influence. Avoid sharing ownership, meaning having multiple names. That never works when there's multiple names. When everybody owns something, nobody owns it. So it's important. Tracking the due dates is important of accountability, because then you're managing expectations of when something needs to get done before it needs to get escalated. And really, the accountability drives the action to make these things happen. I'm a big believer in keeping the RAID log as what I call sort of a living document, meaning you have to keep it current. It's not this one-time activity that you put the risks in there and then you never look at it again. It should be used in project meetings. It should be used in status. You should be looking at it on a regular basis. It should guide your agenda for certain topics. I mean, there might be meetings that are just to focus on particular issues. Integrating it with the status report, right? Because the status should be including key risks and key issues and upcoming decisions, and sharing it with stakeholders. Archiving close items, so you want to keep it clean. You don't want it just to be this running log of sort of garbage. So you want to sort of archive or close or filter out those things that are no longer relevant. And it's got to be the source of truth in one place. And again, it doesn't matter what the tool is, so long as you have a single place that it's in and it's maintained. So here's the point: is you want your RAID log to be simple and easy to maintain. You want to capture the risks, the actions, the issues, and any decisions that need to get made. Every single thing needs to have an owner, and it needs to have a date. Without that, it just stays in the log, and then nobody's looking at it. You want to use sort of a consistent methodology for scoring it and so on. And every company has these in their PMOs. And it's got to be living. You want to update it frequently. You want to make it visible across the teams, and you want to use it as part of the way that you manage your projects. Keep it focused on facts, and as the result, you get a RAID log that adds value and not overhead. And hopefully, this presentation added some value and did not add risks or issues to your career. Thanks for watching.